As authors, our understanding of how a publisher approaches marketing and publicity only goes so far. We have questions, so we brought on a guest who could answer them. Welcome to Everything Cookbooks, the podcast for curious writers, readers, and cooks. This is Kate Leahy, and joining me in this episode is Kristen Donnelly. Hey, Kristen.
Hey, Kate.
So I got to ask you this because you know how as authors, we're working in our little silos and sometimes we feel like we're in the dark, that we have no idea what's really going on, behind the scenes at the publishers, what they're doing.
Yeah, it's like it feels so secretive, even if it's not intentional,
Yeah, they're probably just too busy to email us. Like, they're not going to give us an update every day. Like, so author, this is all the stuff we did for you today. Can you imagine?
No, I know. Sometimes it does feel like you're just waiting and waiting to figure out the publicity for your book. Like, when are we going to have that meeting? When are we going to have that meeting? And what are they doing? What are they doing over there?
What are they doing? Because we know they're busy. So that's why today we're going to learn a little bit more about what goes on behind the scenes. So joining us today is Lorraine Woodcheke. Lorraine is the Marketing and Publicity Director for Hardie Grant North America. She has more than 15 years of experience in marketing and public relations and spends much of that time getting the word out about cookbooks. So you can see why we couldn't wait to have her on the show. For several years, she worked with food and drink brands at the PR agency Edelman, although she spent much of that time wishing she was still in cookbook publicity. When she's not at work, you can find her in her kitchen cooking from a new favorite cookbook. Lorraine, thanks so much for joining us today on Everything Cookbooks.
Thank you so much for having me.
So excited to have you.
Yeah, this will be fun. I think both Kristen and I will learn a ton from you. So first, I kind of just wanted to get your origin story. What brought you into cookbook publicity to begin with?
Sure. Well, I've spent my entire career working in PR, but my first publishing job was at Chronicle Books. Before cookbooks, I worked on the lifestyle category, and it was so much fun. It was about 10 years ago when we were really seeing that amazing wave of, blog to book. And I got to work with some really cool authors in lifestyle and interiors. But I am a consumer of cookbooks, and I knew that I wanted to work in food and drink. So when I got the opportunity to go over to 10 Speed, I just jumped at the chance and was super excited to go work on their list. And that's really how I got into food and drink.
Oh, so that's where I met you, because you did the publicity for Cookie Love, and I was the co-author on that book with Mindy Siegel all those years ago.
I love that book. And there are so many recipes from that book that I still make all the time.
That's so great.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah.
You just don't have to worry about buying the Muscovado sugar and just use brown sugar and you're fine.
That's right. Yeah. But I did work on some amazing books there, and a great team, a lot of fun.
So then what happened? Because I think you left book publicity for a little bit.
I did. Yeah. I took a break from publishing for a while. I did a couple different things. I worked at an agency, took a contract role in-house for a while, but I really spent those years working outside of publishing, dreaming about getting back into books, which I hear from a lot of people who make the jump from publishing. But, Hardie Grant has such a great reputation in food and drink, and I was very familiar with the company, and I've always had a lot of Hardie Grant books on my shelves. So when I heard that they were expanding in the US, I reached out to Julie Pinkham, who's our group managing director. She oversees all of Hardie Grant publishing globally. And I just ended up jumping on a plane to Australia and really campaigning for her to hire me. And I'm so glad she did. That was a few years ago. It's been amazing to be part of the expansion here in the US.
Yeah. When did Hardie Grant expand into the US?
We've been working with our US distributors, Chronicle Books, I'm going to say for maybe 6 or 8 years now. So our books have been available to consumers here for a while. We are a global publisher. Our headquarters is in Melbourne, Australia, but we also have offices in Sydney, in London, and now in Berkeley.
Awesome.
So our books have been available, but our team has been growing for the last 3 or 4 years or so.
Oh, that's incredible.
So now there's like a full team and you work on acquiring books. And how does it differ now having an office in the US?
Sure. Well, we started with our marketing and publicity team. So there's a few of us that have been working on the books that are currently being acquired in London and in Australia that we would market them to consumers here in the US. About a year ago, Hardie Grant hired Jenny Walkner as our publisher here in the US. And I actually worked with Jenny when she was an
Yes,
editor at 10 Speed.
definitely. Right, because she was the editor for Cookie Love. It all comes back to
That's right.
cookies. But Jenny's so amazing. I'm so glad you were able to connect with her then, and now you get to work with her again. That's got to be so amazing.
It really is. I'm so excited. And she has such a vision for our list here in the US. And she's already done so much in just a year's time. So there's a lot of exciting things ahead for, Hardie Grant North America for sure.
That's really cool because when I saw Jenny was going over or joining Hardie Grant, I thought, wow, there's definitely things that this just means more opportunities for authors. There's another a North American publisher to pitch to, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's so true. She has a great plan for kind of a boutique list of 10 to 15 titles a year. They'll all be focused on cooking and lifestyle. And she really does have an incredible vision for it. So she's been focused on acquiring books that are culturally relevant, but she's really not someone who's excessively focused on trends.
Mm-hmm.
So we think that that just means that she's acquiring lists of books that are really going to make a statement on publication. And some of those books are coming to market as soon as next year, which is crazy that it's coming soon. But she's acquired Sylvan Brackett's Rintaro cookbook. So, one of San Francisco's most popular restaurants. She recently acquired The Sprouted Kitchen. Sarah Fort
nice.
a beautiful book coming with, really vibrant vegetable-focused recipes. Fadi Katan, who's a chef and restaurateur in Palestine, is writing a book called Celebrating Bethlehem. Is really going to be a portrait of one of the most storied cities in the world. Some incredible recipes along with it. So I'm excited about what she's got in the works for us for sure.
Absolutely.
There's a book I'm excited that she acquired by a guy named Danny Childs. He's a mixologist, an up-and-coming mixologist out near me. And he does a lot with, he's just a plant person and I'm a plant person. And he does really amazing infusions using foraged ingredients from his garden. He was one of those people where I'm like, he should do a book. And then I was so excited when I saw that she acquired it.
Yes, it's called Slow Drinks. You're so
Slow
right.
Drinks, exactly.
It's
yeah.
absolutely beautiful. The recipes are amazing. It's really a great guide, to making these incredible creations, really. And his wife is actually the photographer on the book, and she's,
cool.
equally talented. So they're a really dynamic duo that we're excited to have on our list.
Nice.
These seem like books that are going to really also be, they're not necessarily hitting on a trend. They're playing the long game. You want this like really strong backlist. Am I getting that right? Or?
Definitely. That's spot on. I mean, they're very timely without being trend driven. And Jenny really can hit the sweet spot there with the type of books that she's acquiring.
And people who are it sounds like it's authors who are just like so in their element with what they're doing,
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to work with these authors. It feels like, that's one of the things when you're on the marketing side, you're thinking about these books and talking about them, sometimes for a while before you get to actually come in contact with the authors. So we can't wait.
True.
Can't wait to start the process with these people.
But wait, I just have to ask so you had to fly to Australia to pitch yourself for this job. Like, so you went to Melbourne, you had your flat white or whatever they drink there. That's, tell me a little bit about that experience.
It was so cool getting to go there. And I mean, this was, not long before the pandemic. So to be honest, once I had the job, I thought, I'll probably be spending a fair bit of time here. And I think that was their vision as well. And that has not been what's happened since we've been a team from afar. But no, I flew over there. It's such a cool vibe in the office. It's, they've been there a long time. They're really an institution in Australia. They've been publishing beautiful cookbooks and a lot of books even beyond cooking for over 20 years. But it's a pretty cool place to be. I'm excited to get back there and spend some time now that there's maybe an end in sight with the pandemic. But it was great to get over there. I had spoken to Julie, our managing director, a fair bit on the phone by that point, and felt like I was the right person for this job. And I thought, I just have to I just have to make sure they know that. So it was great to get over there and to get to meet the managing director, brilliant woman named Roxy Ryan in Australia, and Stephen King, who's our managing director in the UK, happened to be there at the same time as well. So it was great to get to meet leadership from both of our offices.
I'm thinking the time zone stuff must be really tricky when everyone needs to get onto a Zoom or something like that.
It's like super early or super late or something.
It's actually easier than you think. I feel like, we do have all these tools now that make it so easy to feel like you're sort of in the room together. Sometimes that might mean you're hopping on the phone a bit early or a bit late, but might sound a bit cheesy to say, but I feel like it's easy to do those things when you're just so excited about the projects that you're working on and the books that you're discussing. Technology certainly makes it easier for us to collaborate as a team. That in-person time is so valuable as well. We're excited to have members of the team from the UK and Australia come over and visit our new office in Berkeley. And we definitely want to get over there to see them too. But, it's nice that we do have the tools that make it easy for us to connect with them and connect with our authors too, wherever they are.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your day-to-day like?
I mean, every day is different and every day is exciting. I feel like, we do spend a lot of time at the beginning of the day talking to our colleagues in London, and we often end the day talking to our colleagues in Australia. And everything in the middle is, connecting with our authors, connecting with media, planning campaigns. I mean, that's very general, but that is something that I definitely missed when I was outside of publishing, just how every day you have kind of something different in store for you with so many different projects. We really publish such a range of cookbooks that cover every type of cuisine, every level of cooking, any dietary requirement that you can dream of. And then with authors all around the world, it just means that every meeting feels so different from the last one. Every day feels so different from the last one.
That's true. Like when you were working maybe with a brand that wasn't anything to do with publishing, you have maybe that one brand and you're living with that one brand for a while, and there's only so many pitches you can think of with one say product. Whereas with these books, every single book has a different story, a different angle, a different market that you might be able to reach with that story or that book.
That's so true. I did enjoy the brand work that I got to do when, had gone to a PR agency, but you're right that, I had some cool clients, Sky Vodka, Ghirardelli Chocolate.
Fun.
But I was always trying to do a book publisher partnership. Or, I missed books so much. So there's something special about this industry for sure.
You've come to the right podcast then, because I think all of us gush so much. It's like, then that's what I feel like I do. It's like, oh, could that be turned into a book? Oh, could that be a book? So we talked a little bit about what your day-to-day is like, and also just, how you're trying to tell the story of all these amazing books that are coming out. I mean, I think there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that authors just don't really understand or know. So just on the basic things, say, how are books pitched internally? What is that kind of like, and how is it different maybe in different publishing houses?
At Hardie Grant, I would say there's really both an informal and a formal process. Between Jenny and I, she might send me really any project that she's considering to get my 2 cents from a marketing standpoint. And then, of course, there's always a formal meeting where she will bring any of the projects that she's officially bringing for acquisition to our acquisitions group to discuss that. We have acquisitions meetings in Australia, in the UK, and here in the US. But here in the States, Jenny, Julie, our group managing director, and the marketing and publicity team are all at every meeting. And then we'll often pull in our colleagues from the UK and Australia, depending on the project. I would say that that's probably, for me here at Hardie Grant, that's probably the biggest difference from publishers where I've worked previously is, we do have this very global team where, for whatever reason, we would want to get input from our colleagues abroad. whether it's that they have a different point of view or experience with a book in the same category or that author. But it's really great that we do have all of these different viewpoints because they are our publishers and editors around the world are all very different, but it's nice that they do have kind of a shared vision as well.
So would a book that Hardie Grant acquires need to be a title that works in all the markets, or is it okay if it's really predominantly a North American book?
We have a mix. We definitely look for both. In each market, there are books that are kind of specific to the market where they are acquired. But I would say so many of the books that we are acquiring do have that global appeal. Consumers have become so sophisticated. I think that there's really interest in cooking titles that are being acquired in any of these places around the world. So I feel like that is something that authors should really think about, that their book does have appeal. It's very likely that it has appeal across markets.
Right. I mean, I guess like if you look at the Ottolenghi books, right? Those started off in London, and then they swept North America by storm, and the rest is history.
In those meetings, is it I guess what's the vibe? Is it often an editor pitching something, or has everybody already seen the material? So it's very, very much a discussion, or how does that work?
We've usually seen the materials already. Sometimes it does feel like a pitch from an editor when they're particularly excited about something, but it's a very celebratory vibe, really, because we want to find the next big cookbook. Our editors and our publishers are often very excited about these projects that they're bringing forward, or I'm very excited because I already follow this potential author on social media and I can't wait to work with them. So it's a very happy meeting.
Oh, that's great. So if after, say, a book is acquired and maybe the manuscript is already, it's in the copy edits or it's in layout, when does the marketing come in? When does the sort of like marketing and sales part come into the project?
Well, I would say throughout the process, we're staying in really close contact with our editors. Often we see photos as soon as they come back from a photo shoot, or we're keeping in touch early on so that we know what's happening, what's coming, because we're also communicating that with the sales team to keep them excited or get them excited as early as possible.
The secret sales team.
We're definitely going to touch on that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we stay in close contact with them, and we just want to make sure that when they are going out and talking to their accounts, it might not be the time yet for them to officially present a title, but that they can say, next year, this book is coming. I think you're going to love it. They know their channels so well that we try to keep them in really close contact about what's coming.
That's fascinating. And when you say channels, is that different types of stores or different type of retail opportunities, or?
Exactly. Yeah, it's different retail channels. So, you have your independent book trade, specialty retailers, mass market retailers. There are so many places that make books a part of their retail spread. And we want to be in touch with all of them.
Yeah. Right. With Hardie Grant, is the sales team internal?
Yeah. So we are distributed in the US by Chronicle Books.
Okay.
We do have a dedicated sales team in the UK and in Australia. And there are folks on those teams that are focused on the US and work closely with the team at Chronicle to let them know what's coming on our list. But basically, that just means their sales team is a resource for us, that they're out there selling Hardie Grant and Quadrille, our UK cookbooks imprint, but they're, selling our books in to those retailers, and they represent us as a sales force here in the US.
Oh, cool. So distribution includes the sales team. I actually didn't realize that.
That's right. Yeah.
I didn't realize that either. I mean, I think this is all the stuff that authors, we just don't know happens behind the scenes, but this is a lot of work as well that you have to do on behalf of these books, on behalf of these authors. And it's kind of work that never really gets noticed, but it does pay off in the long run.
It does. I mean, there's really a massive team working behind the scenes to make sure that an author's book has a strong presence in every channel. So we want to make sure it's in the indies, like Book Larder in Seattle or Omnivore in San Francisco, over to Barnes and Noble, Target, Costco, all of these retailers have, a place for cookbooks, and we want to work with them to make sure that Hardie Grant titles are on their shelves.
Speaking of Costco, or I don't know if Costco is considered a specialty market, but I guess I think of specialty markets as anything that's not a bookseller.
Specialty is like Paper Source or Anthropology.
Okay.
And then I believe Costco would fall under the mass market channel.
Interesting.
Oh.
Well, either way, it's funny because I feel like whenever I ask about something like a Costco or an Anthropology, there's always this line from an editor that's like, of course, we'd like every book to get into Anthropology, but we have no control over what happens. It's so funny because I feel like you're often like, really? No control.
Well, and I think that just speaks to just, the insecurity that at least a lot of authors, speaking actually on my own behalf, that you feel that, oh, am I just like getting lost in the shuffle? So I think it's just really fascinating to hear your side and what's going on that we just never hear about as much,
Right. Well, I will say, I think, editors who are so close to the books that they have acquired and that they're working on, are really working tirelessly behind the scenes to campaign to those sales folks to make sure that the books are being presented, wherever there's an opportunity. And then, of course, marketing and publicity, we really join them in that effort as well. We want to make sure that external audiences know about the book, but we really work with that internal audience first to make sure that the book can be available far and wide.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, is there anything that authors can do to help these efforts? Is there anything that, we just maybe aren't aware of that we can help? I mean, obviously we can't hound salespeople and say, please get my book into Anthropology. I'll give you $1 million or
Right. That's a great question. I would say authors really should articulate all of the networks that they already have as they're getting closer to publication. There are contacts that you have or organizations or brands that you've worked with that could really turn into a lead for the sales team. So you want to make sure you're sharing that information with your publisher in the time leading up to publication. So just regularly share updates about what you're up to. It could be something that the marketing team can pass along to drum up excitement with the sales team, and they can in turn pass it on to their accounts. So make the work that you're doing really visible to your team at your publisher, because you just never know how it's going to help sales, marketing, or publicity.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Maybe if the sales team knows your hometown and they wouldn't have been aware of that, they can think, oh, well, there's actually 3 bookstores that I can pitch this local author to, as a local author you want on your shelves or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Something, I don't know if we touched on it in other episodes, but there's I know that I've done where there's an author questionnaire. And that seems like the time to just spend a nice long time. Yeah, exactly.
They are so important. I know that I think every publisher has those. Yeah. And I know that authors sometimes feel a little, maybe they've just finished their book. The last thing they want to do is spend time filling out, 8 pages of information that they're not sure who's going to read it. I assure you, we read it. We pore over it in detail. And that is, a great place to list everything, because also it could even just be something that you share about your background or, something that you've done that, a sales rep knows that their buyer will be interested in. It really could be something that you would never think that this is going to be the thing that turns into a retailer carrying my book, but we look for those little morsels, those tidbits in that.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So definitely spend as much time as you can with that author questionnaire.
That's really valuable information. And actually, just to back up, Lorraine, so you're responsible for publicity and marketing. You're overseeing both sides. What are the biggest differences? Because I think as authors, sometimes we might just merge the two, but they are very distinct, different kind of ways to get your book noticed, right?
You're right that they are very different, but I feel like the benefit to having both marketing and publicity kind of live together is that we want to make sure that there's a cohesive look and feel to whatever you're doing. And one can really help the other. If we know that there's a big publicity hit coming, there might be something that we can do with that on social media or in a paid ad strategy. So we want to make sure that we know everything that's happening so we can make it all work together.
I see. So if you know that there's going to be a big media hit, you can then, the marketing side of what you do can then pay for an ad that's strategically placed. And the PR part is the unpaid. The marketing part can be potentially paid or more brand partnerships or that kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I will say sometimes the publicity hits are what drive the marketing side to kind of kick into high gear. But the way that we've seen the sort of digital landscape change, there obviously is a lot of opportunity there now for books that might not even involve the author, whether that's, advertising behind the scenes or social media has, I think we've known for a while now that this is a place where it's really important to see some book promotion. We're all talking about book talk and, any other place that we should be promoting a title. So, I feel like with publicity, I think it's a process that we know what works. We're always looking for a new outlet or a new venue to promote an author, but it's really the marketing side where we've seen like so much change in the last 5 years with how things have changed with social media and the way that consumers are finding information. But I think it's really just made it that much more important for us to make sure that our authors, our books, us as a brand, as a publisher, have a presence there, which is something that's really driving that marketing effort forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really interesting what you're saying about how the marketing side has really seen a dramatic shift. The publicity side is still not that it's doing it the same way, but there's a way to do publicity that works and it consistently works. With marketing, there was a way that marketing worked and then it didn't work and then it had to shift. And now it's really, I mean, I was just thinking about Wine Style came out in 2021 at a time when things were still not quite open, so we really did have to think, okay, what ways can we get the, discoverability for a book? Because people won't be necessarily as easily browsing in a shop to see it. But this was the first time working on a book where I had a marketing contact in addition to a publicity contact from the publishing house. And then we came up with a giveaway with a couple of brands. So the book was put together in a package with some great Cowgirl Creamery cheese and some great Brock Cellars wine and that kind of thing. But that's something I don't think I would have thought of. I certainly wouldn't have thought of that at the time I was working with you on the Cookie Love book with Mindy Siegel, which I think came out in 2015, which so it's, that's not a long time, but it is a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
working with brands like you've described, it is such great exposure for a book, for an author. And I mean, not to really drive the point home about your author questionnaire, but
please do.
Sometimes that's where ideas like that pop up, where we know like, okay, Kate did this really cool giveaway with Cowgirl Creamery. What can we do this time? What can we do for your next book? And I think that those partnerships are so valuable on the marketing side of things and something that I think we're only going to see more of as we move forward.
Is there anything you're seeing like right now in terms of marketing that's very exciting or moving the needle? Or
that's a great question.
Such a good question. To me, it's something that I think that's happening now more than ever that I really like, and I hope it's something that we continue to see, is authors really giving consumers a peek into the process. We're not necessarily waiting until right before publication to make an announcement. There are times that an author shares that they're on a photo shoot or they're working on a new recipe, or they call out to their fans and followers to do recipe development, or they're sharing something else from behind the scenes. As someone who buys so many cookbooks, I love seeing that. I love getting that peek behind the scenes. I love when our authors do it. I love when other authors do it. And I think that it can be a really effective way to connect with consumers, and something that does ultimately help drive interest in your book leading up to publication, which is so important. We're in the age of the pre-order campaign. It's very important sort of tactic, but I think that doing it in an authentic way is something that I've seen cookbook authors doing, and I love to see it, truly.
That's cool. It's funny. I did a lot of that for Modern Potluck, but I remember asking for permission kind of from the publisher because I wasn't sure if that was okay. And I think it was before Instagram stories were around. So I feel like I would have done even more if I had Instagram stories. But what's interesting is I've worked on some more books recently where they're like, no, don't do that. They only want to do like the cover reveal. So it's very interesting philosophically, like maybe when an author already has such a strong social connection with their customers, it makes sense to do that. And
well, I know we definitely look at it on a case by case basis. We never want to ask an author to do something that they're uncomfortable doing. And some authors are really excited about making that big announcement, kind of holding it close until a certain moment. And, that definitely creates a big splash as well. So it's a different sort of strategy. But I think it probably depends on like how we're looking at it now is, what is this author's comfort level with, not everybody wants to reveal things along the way, but when they do, we're really excited about it.
Cool.
That's good to know. I remember when we did the Lavash book, we were going to Armenia. And so we thought this is just a way to give people this look at how we're actually gathering these recipes. And for us, I think we did it because it was just fun for us to do and to create like a new handle on Instagram. And I think we got a question after the book launched, like, was that a strategic PR kind of or marketing sort of decision? It's like, well, no, but looking back, I guess it worked out that way. The only problem was we started posting in 2017 and we started getting all these requests to buy the book, and we didn't even have a pre-order up yet. And so that kind of then we're like, oh, shoot, are people going to lose interest? So we just had to keep at it until the book came out in 2019. And then we still keep at it, just not at the same amount. But it was kind of like we just did it because it felt like a fun little thing to do. Yeah. But I think it was pretty crucial for that book to succeed, because otherwise who was going to find it? It was a very niche book.
Well, and that book is that's a great example of a book that is just made for sharing on a visual medium where you're giving people a peek behind the beautiful places that you're going and the beautiful recipes that you're developing along the way. So I think, as we said, it can depend on the project, but I mean, to me, sometimes you just know this makes sense. We're going to do it. It's never been more difficult to build an organic following on a social media network. But, I think that it can be such a great thing for authors to do when we know that it's going to get their fans and followers so excited.
This isn't a gotcha question, but I just was curious on your opinion on, on this podcast, we've talked about social media followings. And is this a thing where, if you have a small following, it's not your time to do a book these days? Or is that not necessarily the case?
I think that, we do talk about an author's social following, in an acquisitions meeting. I think that people pretty much assume that now. But I think that the thing about cooking is there's so much lives under that umbrella, right? There are so many categories. We've seen that, not just that expansion, not just with cookbooks, but also with the types of places that are out there where we can potentially promote those books as well. So I would say that that's not the only thing that matters, and that there are definitely exceptions to the rule. I think that authors should work on building that following. That's definitely what, you can imagine that we tell a lot of our authors that early on in the process that, they have X amount of time. We're there to help them build that following. But I would say that it's not the most important thing that we look at. We're really subject matter driven, and, someone's social following is not it's not always the make it or break it element.
That's a great way to describe it. Yeah, no.
I know, like Slow Drinks, for example, he has under 5,000 followers, but obviously the people who follow him are very into it. They're really into what he's doing. And I feel like what he is doing ties to interests where people have a big following. So
I'm so glad that you mentioned Danny there too, because he is such an expert at what he
yeah,
does. And I think that anyone who buys his book they're going to have such an incredible resource in that book. And I think ultimately that is really what we're looking for first, before we're looking for someone with, X amount of followers. We want to find people who are great at what they do and who are passionate about what they do and who are excited about this process and creating something beautiful that people are going to want to have in their collection, in their cookbook collection forever. And Danny is such a good example of what we're looking for. I can't wait for Slow Drinks.
Right. When is that coming out? Is that next spring, next fall?
Fall 23. Yeah.
All right.
So not too
heard
far.
it here first, folks.
Right.
Well, Lorraine, what I'm taking away from this conversation is if you're an author, really pay attention to that author questionnaire, because it is immensely more valuable because it's one of those things, as an author, you think it's just another thing to check off the list and there's other things, bigger fish to fry. But actually, that might be the biggest fish that you should fry first before you do the other things, to really, butcher analogy there. That really was what was fascinating too, is how you talked about how you can then use tidbits there to give it to sales teams, and they can find sort of organic connections that we don't know about, but they might know.
That.
And it was also just fascinating to learn more about Hardie Grant and all this kind of cross-pollination between UK, Australia, and US and North America. Just because I've always thought of Hardie Grant as really visually punchy, interesting looking books. I have a copy right in front of me. No one can see this, but of Bitter Honey. And it's such a beautiful book. I think, American cookbook authors always get jealous of the illustrated covers. So,
love covers.
Yeah. And also just, I'm using Bitter Honey. It's a book that's all about recipes and stories from Sardinia. And it's helping me get more of a sense of Sardinian food for a book I'm writing with Shelley Lindgren called Italian Wine. So it's really great little beautiful inspiration resource for me.
That's so great. Yeah, I love Letitia Clark. She has such a beautiful life, and it does make you want to jump on a plane to Sardinia immediately.
Sure does. Kristen, what other takeaways?
Well, that it's not only collaborative between those markets, but between Hardie Grant and Chronicle.
I think the Hardie Grant sales and Chronicle book sales are really kind of a dream team where we distribute their books in Australia and New Zealand, and they distribute for us here in the United States and Canada. So I think it's just a long time partnership. And, our books, we each have our own look and feel, but our books look really nice next to theirs on the shelf too.
Nice.
So I think that helps the sales team.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lorraine. That was really fascinating and giving us a little peek behind the curtain of sales and marketing. And I've definitely come away from this conversation with some new things that I can apply to projects going forward. But I wanted to give us a little bit time at the end to talk more about some of the books that you're really looking forward to that are coming out fall 2022 or even spring 2023.
We have such a great list coming. There's a few in fall 22 that I can't wait to hold advances in my hand. But one, actually, just this week, we had an announcement about Giuseppe's Italian Bakes. And this is from Giuseppe, from the winner. He was the winner of Great British Bake Off in 2021. And that's coming this October. And it's going to be his incredible cakes, desserts, and even some savory bakes in there too.
Wow. I've got to get that book.
I screamed when I found out about that one. I was so excited. And then we also have Pasta Grannies,
nice.
Comfort Cooking, which this is the second book from Vicki Benison, who's the creator of the huge YouTube channel Pasta Grannies that I think became kind of a phenomenon during the pandemic. But the first Pasta Grannies book was a James Beard Award winner. We know this one is going to be just as wonderful. More heartwarming recipes and stories from Italian grandmothers. That's another one that I can't wait for. But there's lots to come.
Ooh.
Awesome.
Well, that's really just going to be fun to see, and also just see how Hardie Grant North America evolves in the coming years, and kind of moves into the Berkeley office and all that fun stuff. I'll have to swing by and have a cup of coffee with you sometime.
Please do. Come visit. Come visit.
Just one thing I wanted to ask too is there one thing on your kitchen counter or in your kitchen that you couldn't cook without?
It's such a good question. I mean, I feel like the bench scraper is such a legendary, like, how can we not just automatically give that to anyone who gets their own apartment? It's such a great tool in the kitchen. It makes cooking so much easier. And it's like, I feel like attached to me when I'm in there cooking.
That is so funny, because Kristen and I talked before we brought you on to prepare for this conversation, and I said that was my one thing that I just I feel a little lost when it's not by my side in the kitchen.
I can relate.
And meanwhile, I like when I use a bench scraper, but often forget about it.
Well, maybe we'll bring you into the fold.
Yeah.
And then my final question is, if somebody wanted to get into cookbook PR and marketing, what are kinds of, maybe they're in PR right now, or maybe they're in communications. What's maybe a step that you would recommend they take?
I would say, first of all, I mean, I think just consuming all of the food media that you possibly can, to know what's happening and where our books might be covered, and then following the publishers that you admire on social media and LinkedIn so that you'll know when anything's coming. I would say that those are some of the things that you can do to start to know what's coming up from these publishers. What are they doing? And you can kind of start to learn about a publisher's own sort of brand identity that way too, to figure out like where the right fit for you is. Do you dream of being a part of West Coast publishing, which does kind of have a different vibe than the New York publishers? I think that can be a good way to get to know their lists and what's coming.
I also imagine if you work in other types of PR, sometimes authors hire their own PR agents to complement what the publisher's doing. So if you can get an author as a client and like show that you can help promote a book, then that probably can help as well.
It's so true. I mean, we've seen newsrooms shrink a bit, and that means that if you're representing a product or a brand, you're potentially speaking to the same editor that you would to run a recipe excerpt, so there is so much crossover there. So I think, Kristen, you're so right that if you can, freelance for an author that's hiring their own publicist, or, sometimes publishers hire external freelancers as well. That can be a good way to get some experience before you officially make the jump to in-house.
I love it. That's just such great advice. Lorraine, it's been a true pleasure to have you on Everything Cookbooks today. And you've spilled the beans on so many things that I think will help me, and hopefully will help a lot of our listeners as well. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you so much for having me on, and so lovely to speak with both of you.
Thank you for listening to Everything Cookbooks. If you have questions, contact us through our website, everythingcookbooks.com. If you have a second to spare, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Much gratitude goes to our editor, Abby Cirquitella, who always polishes up our chats to make them shine. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep on reading, writing, and cooking.